Hey, what's up guys, my name is Cherno and welcome to episode 108 of Game Programming. So today we're going to talk about actually extracting our sheet cells into individual sprites. As you can see, we've got this to-do here. So the idea is, I finished that font sheet. This will be up for download probably next episode because we're not actually going to use it in this episode. But I finished this. I'm probably going to add another row here and add more symbols because we don't have anything like square brackets, curly brackets, backslashes, forward slashes. We don't have any of that stuff yet. But this is what it looks like, right? So we've got uppercase and lowercase characters as well as a bunch of symbols. I'm going to talk more about this in the next episode because that's where we're actually going to implement the font rendering. But basically, just so you guys understand our problem and you can understand thus the solution for it, we've got all these different sprites, right? We want to we actually want to render each letter individually, of course. So our problem here is that we want to extract essentially each one of these letters and each one of these symbols and numbers, each one of these characters, we want to extract into its own sprite, okay? It needs to be its own sprite so that we can render only it, okay? That is the idea. So to do that, we need to make a method for that, okay? So we don't actually have one. I actually thought we kind of did, which is why last episode I was going to just do the font stuff this episode, but we don't, okay? So we could either implement this in the Sprite class or the Sprite Sheet class. But essentially what we need is an array of sprites. One thing I really like to do, by the way, is instead of just jumping straight away into the sprite or the Sprite Sheet class and I guess pulling, and I guess, you know, just starting to write the code for the method there, I'm actually gonna write like what we want first, right? I'm actually gonna write like the result first of how I want to use this new method that we're about to write. So I want it to work like this, right? So we want to have a private static sprite, an array of sprites here, okay? We can call this characters will equal probably something along the lines of sprite.split, maybe. We'll call it split, and that will be in charge of splitting that font sheet, okay? That is what I want. In fact, let's probably do it in the sprite class, okay? Because it does return an array of sprites, makes sense. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So literally right now I can just go create method, okay? But I'll do it for you guys in case you're not using Eclipse. If you're using like Sublime Text or something, then you won't have that, obviously. Okay, so over here under this, I'm going to just put up public static sprite. The return type is going to be a sprite array, of course. And I'll call this split like I did before. And all it's going to take in is the sprite sheet. All right, and that's it. And it's going to return sprites. So let's straight away, let's just type in sprites and then return sprites. All right. So straight away, we'll type in what we want to return, okay? This will tell you how it's been initialized. Don't worry, we'll initialize it eventually anyway. So basically, let's start writing this algorithm. It's going to be another one of these algorithms like we had in the Sprite Sheet, like this one here, but it's going to be a bit more simple, so don't worry. Anyway, first of all, we actually need to make a few adjustments to the Sprite Sheet class. I was looking through this earlier. We've got three variables here, width and height. Now, this is not the width of the Sprite Sheet, right? This is the width of the amount of sprites. So this isn't that's one really important distinction to make. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to make a public int, a private int, and I'm actually going to call it width and height. I want to make it 2, okay? These are lowercase. So the uppercase ones, they're public and they're final, okay, which means that they're constants. That is that's the width and height of each sprite, okay? In fact, it's the same as size if it's square, okay? So if our sprites, for example, here are 16 by 16, that is the size of each character. 16 by 16 pixels, this would basically be 16, and both of these would also be 16. That's the idea, right? That's what it is. Now, what we want, though, is to actually physically know how big this sprite sheet is in pixels, okay? We need to know that. How big it is horizontally, so the width and the height, okay, vertically. We want to know those two. We need to know we need to know both of those pieces of information. So that's why I've made a width and height. This is going to be the width and height of the actual sprite sheet, okay? So down over here in load, where we actually load the file, I'm going to get rid of W and H here. I'm going to get rid of the declarations and change this to be width and this to be height. So it's actually setting the fields, okay? And then, of course, we'd have to replace width over here where we have to, everywhere where we had W before, and then height as well, okay? Simple as that. And that's it. That's the only change I'm making. We need to make a getter for that as well. So it'll simply be public int get width. We already have, we don't have anything like that, so this is perfect. And that will return width, right? And then public int get height, okay? And that will return height. Okay, and that's pretty much all we need to know. okay? We just need to know the actual width and height of the sprite sheet that we're loading in pixels, okay? And then we could just pass in the parameters here, but then we shouldn't have to, right? Because sprite sheet should know how big it is. That's just one of the requirements, okay? So the first thing we need to evaluate now is essentially, I guess, the amount of sprites. Okay, now the sprite sheet doesn't contain that information, but we should know that information, okay? So let's talk about how we can work out how many sprites are in the sprite sheet using very, very simple maths. So imagine you've got a sprite sheet like this, okay? The width and height of the sprite sheet is 32 by 32. And the size of each sprite, as you can see down the bottom here, is 8 by 8 pixels, all right? So how can we work out how many sprites are here if we just have the size of the sprite and we just have the width and height of the actual sprite sheet? Well, what we can do is pretty simple, right? We need to find out how many pixels are in this sprite and divided by how many. Sorry, we have to figure out how many pixels are in this sprite sheet and divided by how many pixels are in the sprite, are in each sprite. So we know our sprite sheet is 32 by 32, which is 1024, right? If we multiply those two together, and then we also know that each sprite is 8 by 8, so 8 times 8 is 64, right? And if we divide 1024 by 64, we get 16, okay? So we know that there are 16 sprites here. You can obviously see it here. It's 4 by 4, that's 16. But that's how we can work it out mathematically. So back to this now, yeah? We'll make an amount variable, so that is the amount of sprites that we actually need to create. And we'll set this equal to sheet.width, sheet.getWidth, right? So that's the width in pixels, and then we'll multiply that by sheet.getHeight, okay? And then we'll divide this, and I put this in brackets. You don't really have to, obviously, but just to make it easier to see. And then over here, I'll simply put up the size of each sprite, right? Which for us will be sheet.width times sheet.height, okay? I really should call this like sprite width or sprite height or something. In fact, I probably will, just because I'm going to refactor this, Alt-Shift-R, just because it's probably hard to read. Okay, so sprite width and sprite height, simple as that. These should be equal to pretty much size if our thing is square. So I could have put sprite size times sprite size, but just in case in the future we want to load sprites that are not square in, then we'll have to change everything. So let's just write it normally now. Okay, and then we'll set the amount of sprites that we actually create will obviously be, well, amount, right? That's how many sprites we want to actually make. So in our case, it'd be, what is this, 13 times like 6, right? What is that? 13 times 6, 26, 52, 78, I think. Am I right there? Let's check. 6 times 13. Yep, 78. So we want 78. We have to return 78 sprites. So that's, in this case, amount should equal 78, okay? Now, what we want to do now is essentially it's going to be made up of 4 for loops, okay? So the first thing we actually need, though, is a way to keep track of, I guess, the current sprite that we're actually dealing with, okay? I'm actually going to write out the for loops first so that it'll be easier for me to explain. But essentially, yp is going to be the y position of the current sprite that we're up to, okay? So this will simply be sheet.getWidth divided by sheet.sprite height, okay? Y++. And then we'll do the same thing for x. XP. Support ended for XP recently, by the way. Related topic, I guess. Alright, not that I use XP or anything anymore, Windows XP, but, you know, end of an era, I guess. Alright, China still uses, they basically live on Windows XP. Anyway, so XP, sorry, this should be sheet width. What have I done here? I've butchered that. So that should be height, this should be width. Okay, great. So what this is going to do is, because since we're dividing by sprite width, this will be basically the amount of sprites that there are horizontally. Okay, that's it. Yeah, okay, pretty simple stuff. So in other words, this number for our sprite sheet will be like 13. Okay, because that's how many of these there are. Okay, and sorry, that's what XP will go up to. XP will go up to 13. YP will go up to 6. Okay, simple as that. It'll actually go up to 5, but you guys get my point. Okay, great. So, because it'll start at 0 from 0 to 5. Now that we've done that though, we basically get to work with the current sprite, but what we need to do now is read every pixel of that sprite. So to do that, we have our y equals less than simply sheet.sprite height, right, y++, and then the exact same thing for x, alright, except of course we're changing all these to be x, and then sprite width, and then x, alright, simple stuff. Now, what we need to do now is basically, we need to create a pixels variable, right? So int pixels, these are going to be the actual pixels of the individual sprites. So we know that sprites are 16 by 16, right? So we can simply go ahead and set it equal to sheet.sprite width times sheet.sprite height, which both those should be 16. So 16 times 16, of course, will equal how many pixels we have in our sprite. All right. Great. So now that we've done that, we can basically set pixels x plus y times sheet.sprite width, right, equal to the extracted pixels. So just to show you guys what we're doing, right, I'm going to resize this to like 16 by 16. And then I'm going to generate a grid that has to be 16. So this is a single sprite, yeah? What we want to do is we want to go into our file here, right? And what we want to do is we want to, this for loop, right? These two, what they kind of do, right, is they find out the index of where we are. So let's just say we're up to Q, okay? The Y here would be 1, right? And then the X would be 0, 1, 2, 3. It'll be 3, okay? So 3 by 1, right? 3, 1. That is the coordinate of this. Now what we need to do is we need to physically take these pixels, these 16 times 16 pixels, and pop them into their own pixel array, and then make a sprite out of that pixel array. That's our goal here. So one thing we have to realize is that, you know how I said that these two, this will be like this will go all the way up to 5, from 0 to 5. This will go all the way from 0 to 12, right? So 13 values for this, and 6 values for this. We need to actually convert that into basically pixel precision, because this coordinate, this 1 being down 1, isn't going to help us. It actually needs to be like, oh, okay, 1 times 16. So we're down 16 pixels. Start from the 17th pixel, essentially. Well, the 16th pixel, the first one is 0. All right? Simple as that. So to do that, whoops, let's not delete our for loops. To do that, we need to make some kind of offset. I'll show you guys basically what it's going to look like. So we want to set our, we want to grab the pixels from our sheet, right? And this will have to be get pixels. We want to grab the pixels from our sheet, and we want to read the appropriate, I guess, version of those pixels. So xp times x, right? Sorry, xp times sheet dot sprite width, okay? And then we also need to add on x. I'll actually add the x on first. All right. So x being the current pixel that we're reading, and xp times sprite width will be the starting horizontal pixel of the sprite. Okay. Now, because this is very long, I'm actually going to take this, cut it, and make 2 variables. So xo will be the x offset. That's the x offset. Y offset will be identical. All right. But the idea is this finds, this will simply find the current pixel that we're reading from the sprite sheet. So for pixels, it's really easy because it's just going to be, you know, it's going to start from 0. But because the particular sprite we're up to in the sprite sheet is not at 0, 0, we have to figure out these offsets, okay? Now, here we'll just simply go x 0 plus y 0 times sheet dot get width, which will get the width in pixels, of course. All right, great. So let's do that. Now, what's up with this get pixels method? It's undefined. We don't have that. Okay, let's go. Let's open our sprite sheet class and see what we've got here. So we've got, yeah, so we don't. Okay, looks like we don't. Okay, that's all right. Let's go ahead and make a, under the constructors, under here we'll go public int get pixels, return pixels. All right, so we've got a read-only way of getting pixels now. Fantastic. Okay, that's it. That's pretty much it. That's not really it, but that's pretty much it. What we need to do now is we need to add these pixels. We want to create a sprite out of those pixels now. Okay, how can we do that? Well, basically, you know, I mean, okay, if we look at the sprite class, which is our current class, you can see that we have a way of actually making a sprite out of simply pixels. Yeah, simple stuff. Okay. Now, that's pretty much all we need to use for this. Okay. So after we've added all of the pixels, remember we don't want to do it in the middle of the for loop. We want to add all of our sheet pixels into this pixels variable, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit up sprites. Now this is where it gets interesting, because what I want to do is I want to hit up new sprite size and color. Sorry, not size and color. Let's find the correct constructor here. Pixels width and height. Right, that's the one. That's the only pixel thing we should have. So pixels and the width, of course, of the actual sprite will simply be sheet.sprite width, and then this will be sheet.sprite height. All right. Now this is what I want to do. This is actually physically the sprite object I want to add to this array, but this isn't an array list, so I can't just go .add. I actually have to know which index in the array I want to add this to. So what we need is a manual way of keeping track of which element number, which index we're actually up to. So to do that, we can actually just make a variable called current. Okay, this will be the current sprite that we're actually working with. Okay, so over here, I'm gonna set sprites current equals new sprite. All right. So the current sprite that we're up to, we will we'll actually add to this. We'll add a new sprite based on these pixels to that. Okay. And then what it will do is it'll go back up to this, and it will deal with the next sprite in our sprite sheet, extract all the pixels from it, and then add it into a new sprite. All right. And I'll keep doing that until we do it for the entire sheet. Now, one thing we need to do is obviously increment our current index, right? And we can do that by just simply typing current ++. What that will do is add the sprite and basically add one to current. Now, to make this shorthand, you could just add the ++ into here. Okay, what that will do is it will look up the current, the value of current. Okay, so for example, 0 for the first one. It will evaluate this expression, this new sprite stuff. It will it'll actually you know, run the constructor for that, do whatever it needs to do, and then it will add that into the current index of sprites, and then it will increment the current variable after it's added it. Okay, if you do something like ++ current, right, what that will do is that will increment it first, so the first one will be 0, the first one will be 1, and then it will actually set sprites equal to current. So we want to do it after, obviously. That's why we put the ++ after. Okay, anyway, that is the idea. Okay. And then at the end, of course, we want to just return sprites, and we've already got that. That's it. That is the entire method. What that will do is extract every single sprite in your sprite sheet into its own sprite and return that. So just to test that this works, okay, this is already here. It's telling us we haven't used it, but that's all right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new instance of the font class in our main class, okay? And we're going to see, because obviously when the new instance gets created for the first time, it's going to run these two static fields, all right, because they're static. So if we go to game, okay, let me just verify. Okay, so fonts Arial PNG is indeed, I think it should be, let's see, fonts Arial.png. Yep, it is indeed in here. There it is. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and go to game, and then I'll just, you know, maybe after game start, I'll just type in font equals new font. Now I think we're actually using Java's font here. Okay, so I'm just going, we don't need this anymore. That was just for the mouse stuff. So I'm actually just going to grab this code and delete it. Okay, so the set color just gone. All right, gone. And then up here, I'm going to grab font and just delete that as well, the import. And now it'll tell us that it doesn't know what font is, so we can import our version of it, which is com.thecherno.rain.graphics, that version, not the Java AWT version, okay? And there we go. That should work. Now let's try and actually run this. Okay, I'm going to hit the debug button. Ooh, I was actually expecting it to crash, but it didn't. Okay, let's actually... one thing I did add, actually, without telling you guys, is inside the sprite sheet, I think that's where it is. Yeah, I added a system.out.println thing that says trying to load, okay? And that'll actually tell us to, okay, let me go through this quickly. And I'll show you guys. This is like a bonus feature for the episode. The episode's done, by the way. If the only thing you guys wanted to know was whether it loaded or not, then yeah, you can probably hit the like button and then just get out. But this is like a bonus little DVD extra. I added a system out to print line that says trying to load plus path. Path, of course, being whenever we set the sprite sheet thing to path, it will come up here. Great. So what I want to do is we got this trying to load plus path. I'm actually going to remove the ln from that. Okay. And what I want to do is in this catch block. Okay. What I'll do is I'll put in system.error.println. And then something like failed. Okay, so it'll be like trying to load path and then failed. All right, and then we can put like a new. It'll be a print line, so it'll be good. All right, and that's actually what will happen if it fails to load. Okay, if it's successfully loaded though, you know, we'll be fine, I guess. Okay, so yeah. So what I mean is, if it's successfully loaded, we actually want to say that it loaded successfully. So we'll put this up here, put this print line, and we'll just put like succeeded or something in. All right. So just to preview how this will work, if I just make this console a bit bigger. So these are all the sprite sheets we're loading. If I run this, you can see it says succeeded. I might actually add a dot to make this look a bit better. It's all about the aesthetics, really. But if I load this up, it'll say succeeded for all these. Whereas if it failed, so if I misspelled Arial, put an S in there or something, and I started this, it actually didn't say failed for us, which is wonderful. But let's go back to Sprite Sheet. Okay, it's because we didn't have this thing. If we actually run it though, and then go over here, that's interesting. So it's generating an exception in it. Okay, I think that's part of the reason. We're catching an IO exception here, but I think what it's doing is it's actually generating an exception initializer error. And the reason it's doing that, by the way, is because this is static and it can't initialize the class because we get an error. So it probably won't really work in this case. But the idea is that if we let's just say something that we don't. Oh, that's like the only way that we load sprite sheets, isn't it? Interesting. So what we can do actually, if we wanted to make it, because it is throwing an exception initialize error, what we could do is simply add another catch block that says if we catch an exception. I don't think we're using Java 7 though. Let's see. We're using Java 1.6. If we weren't, we could do a multi-catch, but we could do a catch exception initializer, right? Okay, and then we could actually put the failed into here and the stack trace. I mean, let's just keep that there anyway. Okay, so system error print line failed. Okay, and that's what happens if we throw an exception initializer error. So if we run this, what we should get. Okay, well right now everything succeeds, but if I go into font and I misspell Arial or something, go back into Sprite Sheet, run this, it will actually. Okay, no, it won't. So there's a number of exceptions that get thrown. Let's go ahead and just make it exception. Okay. And let's run that. So now you can see that what happens is it goes trying to load, all these things succeeded, and then at the end trying to load fonts real, there's no such thing, so it failed. Okay, so it tells us what gets loaded and what doesn't. So this is a bit of a debugging thing as well, but that's basically what I added. And yes, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of game programming. It is pretty long, but next time we're actually going to talk about rendering text. So by the end of the next episode, 109, we should be able to draw text onto the screen. All right, be sure to hit the like button if you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.